The last verified image of Lisa Harnum alive is grainy, low resolution, and entirely unmistakable. She's in the corridor, just outside apartment 1503, at the Hyde, a luxury high-rise on Liverpool Street in the heart of Sydney. She has her bag. She is moving toward the exit, and she is clearly trying to leave. What the building's camera captured next stopped investigators cold. Simon Gittany appears behind her. His hand clamps over her mouth. He drags her back through the door. It closes. 69 seconds later, Lisa Harnum's body was found on the footpath 15 stories below. 69 seconds. That's the entire length of the footage. 69 seconds between the door and the fall. People have debated this case since the moment that number became public. What the footage proves, what it doesn't, what it can and can't tell you about what happened on the other side of that apartment door. Tell me in the comments where your head goes as this unfolds, because I want to know what you're thinking before the evidence starts answering the question for you. That image, recorded by one of the very cameras Gittany himself had installed, would become the most examined piece of evidence in one of Australia's most significant domestic homicide cases. Because Gittany told police that Lisa had climbed over the balcony on her own, that it was a tragic accident, that he had tried to save her, that he had pressed himself against the rail and reached out as far as he could and screamed her name as she fell. And for a brief window, investigators had to hold that possibility open. It didn't stay open long.
My daughter used to say, people can ask for help, but children and animals cannot. And now young women who are caught up in situations like my daughter found herself in need a voice as well.
Lisa Cecilia Harnum was born in Canada in 1981. She grew up in Toronto, raised by her mother Joan alongside her older brother Jason. Her father was never part of her life. The people who knew her as a child described someone who was warm and difficult to ignore. The kind of person who made a room feel different when she walked into it. She loved to move. She studied tap, jazz, and ballet from early childhood, competed across Canada and the United States, and her mother remembered her dancing in the specific way parents remember things that feel like a window into who their child really was. But her early years carried genuine difficulty. She was bullied at school. She fell into depression as a teenager. She was eventually diagnosed with both anorexia and bulimia. At 18, she was hospitalized at Toronto General Hospital, and Joan would later tell a Sydney courtroom that they came close to losing her more than once during that period. Not once. More than once. Lisa survived it. She rebuilt herself, slowly and on her own terms, and then she did something that took real courage for a young woman who had been through what she had. She got on a plane to a country she'd never lived in, and she started over. She arrived in Sydney in 2005, and she loved it almost immediately. She found work in the hair and beauty industry, made friends, enrolled in courses. The people around her in those early years described someone who had come a long way from the teenager who had nearly disappeared inside herself. She was sharp, social, easy to be with. She was looking for a roommate when someone introduced her to Simon Gittany. Gittany was a shoe importer, polished, confident, and comfortable in the kind of lifestyle that makes certain people immediately interesting. He had an apartment at the Hyde, a luxury building in Sydney's central business district, and at first the relationship had the quality that relationships often do when one person is very good at showing you the best version of themselves. He was attentive. He seemed devoted. He was interested in Lisa in a way that felt, in the beginning, like she genuinely mattered to him. That's the part worth sitting with before anything else. Nobody walks into a relationship like this with their eyes open to what it is. The version that's shown at the start is the whole point. Court records and trial testimony traced a pattern that began early and tightened with time. Gittany told Lisa what she could wear. He asked her to quit her job at the salon she'd been building her life around since arriving in Sydney, the work she had found on her own, in a country she had chosen for herself. And she did. He wouldn't allow her to work out at a public gym because other men were there. So her personal trainer came to her, to the apartment, because that was the only way Lisa was permitted to do something as ordinary as exercise. He sent text messages to her phone while she was visiting Canada in 2010 telling her, in direct terms, not to let any man speak to her that day, that her eyes should only look at him, that he was the one. He typed those words and sent them as though they were entirely reasonable. He later told a court they were him being cute. Friends began dropping away from Lisa's life in ways she couldn't always explain, because she didn't always know why. What she couldn't see was that Gittany had accessed her email account and was deleting messages from men before she ever read them. Contacts disappeared from her Facebook. People she'd known went quiet. She might have wondered what she'd done wrong. She would not have known that the explanation had nothing to do with her. He threatened to have her deported if she ever tried to leave. Joan later recounted to the court the exact words, that if Lisa ever left, Gittany had told her the only place she was going was the airport, and that he would have her passport cancelled because he knew people. Her immigration status, her ability to remain in the country she had rebuilt her life in, used as a reason to stay. In October 2010, Lisa sent a text to Joan, saying she missed her family and friends desperately, that she had no life. Joan received it. She kept calling. She kept the line open. But what she received from Lisa was never entirely consistent. Some messages sounded warmer, more hopeful, occasionally even excited. The variation wasn't accidental. Lisa was operating inside an environment where every communication she sent or received was potentially visible to Gittany through surveillance software he had loaded onto her phone and her computer. Every text, every call, every search she made, every page she opened. He had also installed pinhole cameras inside the apartment and outside the front door. Cameras Lisa did not initially know were there. The rooms she moved through, the conversations she believed were private, all of it was being observed through equipment her fiancé had placed without her knowledge. The couple became engaged in June 2011. He proposed at her 30th birthday party. His family were there, his friends were there. None of Lisa's were. Whatever shift Lisa had hoped the engagement might bring, it didn't come. Within weeks of the engagement, Lisa began confiding in two people she had come to trust. Her personal trainer, Lisa Brown, was one of them. Brown sensed something was wrong and referred Lisa to a life coach and counselor named Michelle Richmond. Lisa had her first meeting with Richmond 8 days before her death. 8 days. At that first meeting, she asked Richmond not to take notes. She said she didn't want any evidence, anything Simon could find, anything that could tell him what she was saying or who she was saying it to. She told Richmond she had been cut off from her friends, that she felt constantly monitored, that she couldn't go anywhere without his knowledge. She said she was planning to leave. 2 days before her death, she acted on it. She packed a bag of personal belongings, drove to a storage unit in Bondi she had booked and paid for herself, and left them there. She was building the beginning of the life she would step into the moment she got out. She had researched flights back to Canada. What she didn't know was that Gittany's spyware had been capturing all of it in real time. Every search, every booking page, every text to Richmond. He knew she was leaving. He had simply not told her that he knew. On the morning of July 30th, 2011, something shifted. Whether Lisa discovered the extent of the monitoring or whether something else broke open that morning isn't fully established in the court record. What is established is that she went to the bathroom, closed the door, picked up the house phone, and called her mother in Canada. She whispered. She told Joan she needed to get out, that she couldn't wait any longer. And then she said something Joan would repeat in court, that if anything happened to her, Joan needed to contact Michelle Richmond. She made her mother write down the details. She made her read them back. She was standing in a bathroom, whispering, making her mother memorize the name of the counselor she had been seeing in secret for 8 days, because she understood what the morning might bring. She told Joan she loved her, and then she picked up her bag and walked toward the door. What happened inside the apartment between that phone call and the moment the hallway camera recorded Lisa moving toward the exit is not captured on any recording. What the building's corridor camera did capture is what came after it. Gittany appearing behind her in the hallway, his hand over her mouth. Lisa being pulled back through the door closing. 69 seconds later, a neighbor heard a woman's voice screaming, "Please help me, God help me," and then the sound that ended it. Wayne Steele, a City of Sydney laborer, was working near Museum Railway Station that Saturday morning, meters from the Hyde. Another council employee, Paul Baker, was working directly across the street in Hyde Park. Baker told the court he heard something brief, a groan, a single short sound, before people around him began to understand what had landed on the footpath outside the building. Lisa had fallen from the 15th floor balcony. She was 30 years old. When police arrived and made their way upstairs, Gittany gave them a version of events almost immediately. He said they had been arguing, that Lisa had run toward the balcony, that she had climbed over the railing in a state of extreme distress, that she had a secret she was threatening to reveal, one she feared would destroy their relationship. That he reached out as far as he could, pushed himself against the rail, and couldn't get to her in time. That he kept his eyes on her until she hit the ground. Then investigators pulled the building's surveillance footage. The cameras Gittany had installed inside the apartment, the ones that had tracked Lisa's every movement for months, that had run continuously through arguments, through quiet evenings, through moments she believed were hers alone, had been switched off in the hours before she died. What remained was the corridor camera outside the apartment, the one he didn't control, and it showed what it showed. Before investigators had even finished reviewing that footage, something else was recovered. When police examined Lisa's body on the footpath, an officer found a small piece of paper in the front pocket of her jeans. It had been torn into pieces. When reassembled, it read, "There are surveillance cameras inside and outside the house." Joan Harnum, shown the note during the trial, confirmed it was her daughter's handwriting. Lisa had written that note. She had carried it on her body the morning she tried to leave. She had torn it so it couldn't be easily read at a glance, and she had kept it. What she left behind was a document, evidence of what she understood about the life she had been living and what she was trying to escape from. And as the investigation extended outward, one more thread emerged that investigators had no way of anticipating. A man who had been walking to work through Hyde Park that morning and hadn't been looking for anything at all. Which piece of this stays with you most? Leave it in the comments, because the prosecution built its case across all of these layers simultaneously, and the courtroom argument over them was harder fought than the verdict might suggest. Josh Rathmell was an ABC employee walking through Hyde Park on his way to work on the morning of July 30th, 2011. He heard what he would later describe in court as deranged screaming and looked up toward Liverpool Street. From his position, he observed a figure on the 15th floor balcony of the Hyde. What he saw was a man lifting what appeared to be a piece of luggage from the balcony, in a motion he described specifically as unloading, before turning immediately and going back inside the apartment in what he called a fluid movement. He continued walking to work. Only after he understood what had landed on the footpath did he comprehend what he had actually witnessed. He hadn't been positioned there. He hadn't been looking. He had simply been passing through at the exact moment that mattered. His account sat in direct contradiction to every element of the story Gittany had told police. The motion Rathmell described was not desperate, not the action of a man reaching outward in panic. It was controlled and immediate, and the person who performed it walked straight back inside. Justice McCallum would later describe his account as careful and compelling. The building's internal CCTV captured one more detail that morning. After Lisa fell, Gittany was recorded in the elevator descending to the ground floor, wearing a white t-shirt and striped pajama bottoms. If you're not already subscribed and you value true crime research that stays inside what courts actually established, rather than what headlines compressed it into, subscribing means more work like this reaches you. There are other cases documented at this level that haven't received the attention they deserve. The trial was judge-only. Justice Lucy McCallum of the New South Wales Supreme Court heard all of the evidence and delivered the verdict herself. Crown Prosecutor Mark Tedeschi built the prosecution's case across several interlocking layers: the CCTV corridor footage, the note in Lisa's pocket, the spyware records, the internal cameras that had been switched off that morning, the testimony of Lisa Brown and Michelle Richmond about Lisa's state of mind and her plans in the days before her death, and the eyewitness account of Josh Rathmell. Each piece of evidence was independently documented, each piece was tested, and each piece pointed in the same direction. The defense countered across multiple fronts. They argued that Lisa had climbed over the balcony during the argument, that she had been threatening to reveal a personal secret, and had acted in a state of extreme distress. They referenced her history of depression and the eating disorders she had battled since adolescence as relevant context for her emotional state. Gittany took the stand and described the scene in terms of helplessness and grief. A man who had loved someone and watched her fall. Justice McCallum measured that account against the full weight of what the prosecution had presented. On November 27, 2013, she delivered her verdict: guilty of murder. In her judgment, McCallum described Gittany as controlling, dominating, and at times abusive of Lisa Harnum. She found he had killed Lisa in a fit of rage. She said she was confident, to the point of actual persuasion, that he had maintained that rage after discovering she was leaving him, carried her to the balcony, and dropped her over the edge. She said there was no question he intended to kill her when he did it. She said Lisa must have been in a state of complete terror in the moments before her death. The sentencing came on February 11, 2014. 26 years in prison, a minimum non-parole period of 18 years. McCallum found no genuine prospects of rehabilitation. When the sentence was read, members of Gittany's family in the public gallery erupted. One of them shouted that he would not serve that time. The judge ordered their removal from the court. Joan Harnum's victim impact statement was read during the proceedings. She appealed directly to men who seek to control and confine the people they claim to love, asking them to stop. She asked anyone who sees that control happening around them to reach out, to say something, to help bring it to an end. She closed by asking that Lisa's cries be heard.
No winners in this case. Two families have had their lives dramatically changed forever. We will always mourn the loss of our beautiful Lisa Cecilia and are working towards making her legacy a powerful wake-up call to young women and to parents, siblings, and friends of these young women to be aware of the warning signs of a controlling relationship and take a proactive approach to assisting them. My daughter used to say, people can ask for help, but children and animals cannot. And now young women who are caught up in situations like my daughter found herself in need a voice as well.
If this case is one you think more people should understand, and you know someone who thinks carefully about these things, consider passing it on. The evidence assembled here took years to establish in court, and still doesn't reach the people it should. What the trial established, across years of investigation and proceedings, was this. The moment Lisa Harnum decided to leave was the most dangerous moment of her life. She had understood that. She had been deliberate about her preparations, precisely because she knew what discovery would mean. She had whispered from a bathroom. She had used a storage unit across the city. She had asked her counselor not to take notes. She had written down what she knew about the cameras, and kept that note in the pocket of her jeans the morning she tried to walk out. None of it was enough. And the reason it wasn't enough is not complicated. The system she was trying to escape had been built to make escape visible before it could happen. When she moved, he already knew. The spyware had told him. What he hadn't accounted for was that the tools he had spent years building to contain her would become the tools that convicted him. The cameras he installed to monitor her recorded the last evidence used against him. The software he used to track her flight searches told investigators the full scale of what had been happening. And the note she had written about those cameras, torn into pieces and tucked into her jeans, was still in her pocket when police found her on that footpath. Lisa Harnum woke up on July 30th, 2011, believing she was hours from getting out. She had made the call. She had her bag. She had already started moving her life to somewhere he couldn't reach it. What she couldn't know, what so many people in her position cannot know, is that the moment of actually leaving is the moment when the danger is highest. The cameras recorded 69 seconds. The court spent years reconstructing what those seconds meant. And the verdict that came out of all of it is a reminder of how painstaking the work of establishing truth can be when the only direct witness to the final moment is the person who carried it out. And one stranger, walking to work on a Saturday morning, who happened to look up,